She smiled. She laughed at his jokes. She kept finding reasons to be around him. And then she asked him 2 questions, just 2. And based on his answers, she decided everything. Whether he was worth her time, whether he was worth her heart, whether he was even worth a second conversation. Here's what nobody tells you. Those 2 questions, they weren't small talk. They were a test, a very carefully designed, psychologically loaded test. And most men fail it completely without even realizing it happened. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what those 2 questions are, why women ask them, and what the answers reveal that no woman will ever directly tell you. Let's talk about something that most people in the psychology space are too afraid to say out loud. When a woman is attracted to an older man, and I mean genuinely, deeply attracted, her brain does not just switch off and let her float into fairy tale land. No, her brain becomes more active, more calculated, more strategic. Because here's the thing about women who are drawn to older men, they are not drawn to the age. They are drawn to what they assume comes with the age, the wisdom, the stability, the emotional security, the I've already been through the chaos and I survived it energy. And that assumption, it terrifies her a little. Because what if she's wrong? What if this man is just older and not actually wiser? What if the silver hair and the calm voice are just a costume and underneath it is the same emotional unavailability she's already experienced in younger men, just wearing a better watch? So she tests him. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, women and their games, stop right there. This is not a game. A study published in Evolutionary Psychology found that women, across cultures, use conversational testing as a deeply instinctive mechanism to assess long-term partner compatibility. This is biology. This is survival. This has been happening since before your grandfather was born. And the fascinating part, the part that should make every man sit up straight right now, is that the tests women give older men are different from the ones they give younger men. Because the expectations are different. The standards are higher. And the 2 specific questions I'm about to share with you are the exact filters she uses to decide whether this older man is the real thing or just older. Here is something that should shock you. According to a 2021 survey by the dating platform Elite Singles, over 56% of women between the ages of 25 and 38 said they actively prefer men who are 5 to 15 years older than them. That's not a small number. That's the majority. And the reasons they gave were not about money or security. Those were way down on the list. The top reasons: emotional maturity, knowing what they want, and not playing games. Now, here's the cruel irony. The very things women are seeking in an older man, clarity, groundedness, emotional maturity, are the very things they are most afraid they won't actually find. Because she has probably been burned before. She met a man who seemed established, confident, mature. And then 3 months in, he was emotionally unavailable, commitment-phobic, and texting with 3 other women while telling her she was different. So she learned. She adapted. She built her own early warning system. And that early warning system, it runs on 2 questions. These are not random. They are not accidental. They are not just conversation. These 2 questions are precision instruments, designed, whether consciously or not, to expose the truth about a man's emotional readiness before she goes any further. Let me tell you exactly what is happening when a woman asks a man the first question. What are you actually looking for right now? On the surface, it sounds casual, almost polite, like something you'd hear over coffee. But underneath that question lives a highly sophisticated psychological filter. She is not asking about your preferences. She is asking about your clarity. She is testing whether you know yourself well enough to tell the truth, specifically, and without flinching. Here is the truth most men do not understand. The wrong answer to this question is not something casual. The wrong answer is vagueness, hesitation, performing, saying what you think she wants to hear. The moment a man says something like, "I don't know, I'm just seeing where things go," something shifts in her, quietly, almost invisibly, but it shifts. Because that answer, to a woman who is drawn to an older man specifically because she's tired of unclear men, that answer sounds like a red flag wearing a neutral expression. And here is where it gets genuinely fascinating from a psychology standpoint. Dr. John Gottman, one of the most respected relationship researchers in the world, spent decades studying what creates lasting emotional connection. One of his central findings was that women feel most emotionally safe with men who demonstrate what he called self-clarity, knowing who you are, knowing what you want, and being willing to say it without performing or posturing. When a woman asks an older man, "What are you looking for?" she is checking for self-clarity. She is asking, "Do you know yourself, or are you still figuring out who you are at this age?" Now, here is the answer that passes the test, and it is not complicated. The answer that works is honest, specific, and calm. It does not beg. It does not oversell. It does not flinch. Something along the lines of, "I'm at a point in my life where I want something real. I'm not interested in wasting my time or yours. If there's something genuine here, I want to see where it goes." That answer does something remarkable to a woman who craves an older man. It confirms her assumption. It tells her this one actually knows himself, and that is incredibly attractive in a way that is almost impossible to manufacture if it isn't real. Here's the plot twist, though. A woman who asks this question is also listening for something that most men never realize they're revealing. She's listening to how you respond to her potential vulnerability, because asking, "What are you looking for?" also means she's putting herself out there slightly. She's letting you know she's asking for a reason. And if your answer makes her feel stupid for asking, if it's dismissive, overly casual, or designed to keep her guessing, she will file that away, silently, permanently. This is something that the research from the University of Texas on costly signaling theory backs up beautifully. The theory essentially argues that humans, especially women evaluating partners, look for signals that are hard to fake. Honesty delivered calmly, without ego, without desperation, is one of those hard-to-fake signals. It caused something emotionally, and she notices. Before we move to question 2, because question 2 is arguably even more revealing, let me point something out that most people completely miss. These 2 questions are not always asked back-to-back. Sometimes they are separated by days or weeks or several conversations. She is patient. She is not rushing. Because part of what she is testing is whether you are someone who can hold space over time, whether you're the same man on Tuesday as you were on Friday, whether your behavior is consistent, or whether you are just performing well in the early exciting phase. This is one of the key differences between how women test younger men versus older men. With a younger man, she might test more aggressively, more quickly, because the stakes feel lower and the expectations are already calibrated. But with an older man, she is quieter about it, more strategic. She is not looking for drama, she is looking for proof. And question 2 is where she goes looking for the deepest proof of all. Do you think we're too different? This question absolutely wrecked me the first time I truly understood what it was doing. On the surface, it sounds almost self-deprecating, almost insecure, like she's raising a concern about the relationship. And most men, including most older men who should know better, treat it exactly that way. They either rush to reassure her, no, I think we're great together. Or they get slightly defensive. Why? Do you think we're too different? Both of those responses fail the test, completely, spectacularly, without a single bullet fired. Here is what she is actually asking. When a woman says, "Do you think we're too different?" she is testing your emotional security. Specifically, she is testing whether you are threatened by the age gap, the life stage differences, the possible social pressure, or her independence. She is also, and this is the part that people rarely talk about, testing whether you can hold your own opinion calmly without needing her to validate it first. A man who immediately over-reassures her is actually signaling anxiety. He's telling her, "I need to manage your feelings because I am uncomfortable with any uncertainty between us." And while that might sound caring on the surface, it registers to her as emotional instability, as someone who will crumble the first time things get genuinely hard. A man who gets defensive, that signals ego fragility. It tells her you can't handle a question that even remotely challenges the dynamic. And an older man who can't handle a challenging question is deeply unattractive to a woman who has been specifically seeking someone she can talk to without walking on eggshells. So what is the answer that passes this test? The answer that works acknowledges the question, genuinely. It does not dismiss her concern. It does not panic. It does not overperform. It says, essentially, we might have differences, and that's real. But differences are not the same thing as incompatibility. I'm not afraid of that conversation. That answer hits differently. Because what she hears is, this man is not afraid of me. He is not afraid of the complexity of who I am. He is not going to run the first time something feels complicated. He is not going to need me to be simpler, or younger acting, or less of what I am just to make him comfortable. And that right there is the thing she has been looking for. Dr. Sue Johnson, the founder of emotionally focused therapy, has written extensively about what she calls emotional accessibility. The idea that the most attractive quality in a long-term partner is not confidence in the flashy performative sense, but rather the calm certainty that you will not disappear when things get emotionally complex. That you are accessible, present, engaged, and unafraid. Question 2 is a direct test of emotional accessibility, and it is one of the most underrated questions in all of relationship psychology. Now, here's the thing I want you to sit with for a moment, because this is where it gets truly interesting. Both of these questions share a hidden architecture. Question 1, what are you looking for? Tests internal clarity. Does he know himself? Question 2, do you think we're too different? Tests external security. Can he hold his ground when something challenges the connection? Together, they form a complete picture. And what she is building, consciously or not, is an answer to one overarching question that she will never ask directly. Can I trust this man with my actual self? Not the polished first impression version of herself. The real one, the one with the complicated feelings and the strong opinions, and the bad days and the irrational moments at 2 a.m. Because here's what no one talks about when they discuss women who are attracted to older men. The attraction is not just romantic, it's functional. She's tired, genuinely tired, of relationships where she has to manage her partner's emotional reactions on top of managing her own life. She wants someone who can carry some of that weight. Someone who has, as the saying goes, been through enough to not be rattled by ordinary difficulty. The two questions are her way of checking. Is he actually that person, or does he just seem like that person? And the wild, slightly humbling reality is that most older men fail both questions. Not because they're not good men, but because nobody ever told them these tests were happening. Let me bring in a little science here, because this is genuinely fascinating. Research from the London School of Economics found that women's brains process romantic risk assessment very differently from men's. Women spend significantly more cognitive energy in early relationship stages evaluating what psychologists call long-term partner value indicators. Things like emotional stability, self-knowledge, and social confidence. The reason? Evolution, mostly. Women have historically had far more at stake in partner selection. And while we are obviously not living in prehistoric conditions anymore, those neural patterns are still deeply embedded. This is why women ask questions that seem casual, but are doing heavy psychological lifting underneath. The researcher Helen Fisher, biological anthropologist, and perhaps the world's leading expert on romantic love, put it perfectly when she said that women are slow to fall in love, but harder to fall out of it. The testing phase, those careful strategic questions, is part of that slow process. She is not playing games. She is protecting herself while simultaneously staying open. That is actually an incredibly difficult emotional balance to maintain. And the man who understands that, who meets that balance with his own calmness, is the one who wins. Okay, let me be a little bit funny here for a second, because this mistake is so common, it almost deserves its own monument. The number one thing older men do when they suspect they're being tested, they try to pass the test. And the moment you try to pass a test, and the moment your answer becomes a performance, you have already failed it. This was shocking to me when I first understood it, because it sounds like a paradox. But here's why it makes perfect sense. She is not looking for a perfect answer. She is looking for an authentic answer, because she can feel the difference. Women, especially women who have been through enough relationships to have developed some emotional intelligence, have an incredibly finely tuned radar for performance versus truth. When a man is performing, something in his delivery shifts. He becomes slightly too smooth, slightly too on message, slightly too eager to say the right thing, and that paradoxically feels less trustworthy than a man who stumbles a little but means it. The answer that works is never the most rehearsed one. It is always the most honest one, delivered without panic. So, let's bring this all together. What does a man actually do with this information? First, and this is important, he stops bracing for the test and starts focusing on being the person who would naturally pass it. Because if you have to think too hard about how to answer, what are you looking for? maybe that's information worth sitting with. Maybe it's worth getting clearer on what you actually want before you look for it in someone else. Second, he learns to read the subtext in her questions, not with suspicion or defensiveness, but with curiosity. When she asks something that feels slightly loaded, instead of reacting, pause. What is she actually trying to understand? What fear is sitting underneath that question? And can you address the fear without making her feel foolish for having it? Third, and this is the one that changes everything, he understands that these questions are not obstacles. They are invitations. She is giving him the opportunity to show her who he really is. And if who he really is matches what she has been hoping for, she will not make him wait long to know it. Because here is what is equally true about a woman who craves an older man. When he passes the test, and when he demonstrates self-clarity, emotional security, and genuine groundedness, she does not hide how she feels. She opens up quickly, deeply, in ways that might even surprise him. The tests are not walls, they are gates, and she is the one holding the key, quietly hoping he has enough sense to knock, instead of trying to climb over. So, here is the summary of everything we just covered. When a woman craves an older man, her attraction comes loaded with expectation and with fear. The expectation that he will be everything she has been looking for. The fear that he will be just another disappointment in a better-fitting suit. To navigate that tension, she uses two questions. Question 1, what are you looking for? Tests whether he knows himself, whether he has the self-clarity to say what he wants without performing, without vagueness, without turning it into a negotiation. Question 2, do you think we're too different? Tests whether he is emotionally secure, whether he can sit in uncertainty without crumbling or getting defensive, whether he is grounded enough to have a real conversation about something that actually matters. Together, these questions build her answer to the most important question she will never ask out loud. Can I trust him with my real self? And the man who earns that trust, he earns something rare. Something most men never get to fully understand, which is what it feels like when a woman who has been carefully, quietly holding herself back. Finally, let's go. Now, here's something I need to tell you before you close this video. And I am completely serious when I say, do not leave yet. Everything we talked about today, the two questions, the tests, the emotional logic behind them, that is what happens before she decides. But what about after? What happens in a woman's behavior when she has already decided? When she is not testing anymore because the test is over and she already knows? That is where it gets even more interesting. Because when a woman is genuinely in love, not infatuated, not just attracted, but actually in love, her behavior changes in specific, scientifically documented ways. And most men walk right past these signals without ever seeing them. They are sitting next to a woman who is silently, completely, deeply in love with them, and they have absolutely no idea. The next video you need to watch right now is called A Woman in Love. Can't hide these 5 signs. It is the direct continuation of everything we've been talking about today. Because understanding the test is only half the map. Understanding the signs that she's already made up her mind, that is the other half. And trust me, sign number 3 is going to surprise you in the best possible way. That video is right there on your screen. The moment you finish this sentence, tap it, because the women in your life are communicating something to you right now, and you deserve to finally understand what it is.